Hello and welcome to Everything is Spooky in the Dark, the podcast for WanderingCrystal.com. I'm your host Crystal, and today we'll be talking about the brutal witch trials in England. The 17th century witch trials in England swept across the country, resulting in the death of about 500 innocent people. What sparked the horrific witch trials and ongoing torture in England? The answer is King James I. You may recognize the name if you listen to the podcast about witchcraft in Scotland. King James VI of Scotland is also King James I of England. Following his involvement, witch trials were held throughout the UK for over 100 years, and haunting memories still linger in every corner of the country today. From the ancient city of Exeter to the seaside village of Boscastle and the Pendle Hills of Lancashire, the witch trials in England affected the entire nation. With panic and hysteria running rampant throughout the United Kingdom, no one was truly safe. Queen Elizabeth I had no children during her reign, so following her death in 1603, there was no heir to the throne. But England wasn't left without a ruler. James VI of Scotland became James I of England, joining England and Scotland's crowns in a personal union. The English were really excited about this significant event and wanted to know what King James would do for their country. Many were keen to learn more about him, so they read the one book he wrote called Demonology. To give you a quick summary of the book, it depicts the real fear that the king had about witches. He believed that they were a threat to him and his family's lives. The people of England quickly discovered he was serious about hunting witches. King James believed that there were witches all over Scotland doing the bidding of Satan. Now, he wasn't entirely evil, so to paint him in a less horrific light, he was certain that the witches were dangerous, but he was adamant that they should be prosecuted and punished by the proper authorities. He wasn't interested in just pointing a finger and saying, "Witch! She's a witch!" as they did in Salem in 1692. Unfortunately, the English were swept away by panic and confusion, and they were decisive in the decision of solving the threat of witches themselves. The outcome was the witch hunts in England, which snowballed into years of torment, torture, and fear. The concern that witches were obsessed with poisoning, maiming, and killing on Satan's behalf suffocated the country with a thick blanket of dread. Witch hysteria even resulted in the creation of the Witchfinder General in East Anglia. Essentially, the job was created by a man named Matthew Hopkins, and he was paid to seek out witches across the country. But more about Matthew later, because right now I want to tell you about the Pendle Witches. The trials of the Pendle Witches are England's most famous witch trials. This witch trial was so harsh that it resulted in an entire family's extinction following the accusation of a single prime witness, a 9-year-old girl named Janet Device. What makes the Pendle Witch Trials so interesting is that they began when a young woman named Alison Device was on her way to Trodden Forest. Along her way, she met John Law, the man she was said to have cursed, who later suffered from what was probably just a stroke. John was a peddler, and he had some metal pins in his possession, which were frequently used for healing purposes like treating warts, but they were also used in some magic spells, like divination or love spells. According to John, he refused to sell them to Alison, and she muttered a curse under her breath. Moments later, John fell ill. But like I said before, probably just from a stroke. This was the encounter that changed Alison and her family's lives forever. She was so racked with guilt after John Law fell ill that she confessed to witchcraft. She came from a powerful family of healers, and was so panic-stricken when the man suffered a stroke that she truly believed she was responsible. She confessed, and she named 2 others as cunning women, which are poor women who were said to heal with charms or spells. After Allison confessed and named others, they were all brought to Lancaster Castle to stand trial. Suspected witches from the Lancashire villages of Pendle, Pedham, and Windle were imprisoned in a tiny basement cell, now called the Witch's Tower, within the medieval fortress. The castle is also home to the Crown Court, where the witch trials in 1612 were held. Although the original court was demolished, the place still gives you an idea of what the witches had to endure while on trial. In total, 10 people were charged and hanged for witchcraft in the Pendle Witch Trials, 4 of whom came from the Device family. One of the worst things about the Pendle Witch Trials is that the drop was too short when the witches were hanged. Instead of dying instantly due to a broken neck, they died a slow and painful death by suffocation. It's a really tragic story, and just the fact that so many people died from one family is just horrendous. Now, back to the Witchfinder General and how he was responsible for many brutalities that occurred during the witch trials in England. Matthew Hopkins was based in East Anglia and became known as the Witchfinder General. The self-created job involved hunting witches for money. He would seek out easy targets like older people, people with a lower IQ, and those who were already shunned by their neighbors. He would round them up and torture them by depriving them of sleep. But not just sleep deprivation. He would make the torture so much worse by making these suspected witches run up and down a room for days. The exhaustion and sleep deprivation caused people to hallucinate and eventually just confess. In his whirlwind tour of East Anglia and beyond, Hopkins was responsible for over 300 trials that led to the execution of more than 100 innocent people. He was responsible for the deaths of 68 people in Bury St. Edmunds, including 19 hangings in a single day in Chelmsford. One of the most well-known victims of the Bury St. Edmunds witch trials was Reverend John Lowes. He was accused of being a witch working with the devil. Matthew Hopkins couldn't extract a confession from the Reverend, so in frustration he tortured the ordained vicar by dunking, which was completely illegal. Somehow he got away with it, but Reverend John Lowes was dunked in the moat at Framlingham Castle, and this is what broke the Reverend. This was enough torture to extract a confession. But despite his admission, the Reverend never turned his back on God and never admitted to working with the devil. After conducting his own funeral service at the All Saints Church, the Reverend was hanged. During Matthew Hopkins' time as the Witchfinder General, people suspect that he was responsible for over 300 deaths. But worry not, his greed for money by sending innocent people to death was not enjoyed for very long. Matthew Hopkins died not long after his reign of terror, which lasted about 2 to 3 years, from tuberculosis. The witch trials in England lasted many years after King James' death and is now part of the tragic witch trials history in England and Scotland. If you want to know more about which places to visit in England that have ties to the witch trials, be sure to visit wanderingcrystal.com. I have a self-guided tour of the witch trial sites around England for you to check out. Thank you so much for listening to Everything is Spooky in the Dark, the podcast for wanderingcrystal.com. Bye.